Hi guys, so tonight I am deviating a little from standard programming because tonight is the winter solstice, the 21st of December. And in the UK where I grew up, that is quite an ancient celebration. And the reason for that is that here in Rwanda, we're very close to the equator. So the days and nights are pretty much the same length all the way through the year. It gets light at around 6 o'clock in the morning and it gets dark at around 6 o'clock at night. The temperature's fairly constant. So each day it's predictable. But in the UK, because we're a lot further north in the hemisphere, our days and nights fluctuate throughout the year. So in the middle of summer, it can get dark at 10 o'clock at night. And in the middle of winter, like now, it can get dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's a huge difference between the length of the days and the nights. And 21st of December is a celebration of solstice. And that means that the winter solstice is the longest night of the year. So from now on in, the nights will start to get shorter and the days will start to get longer until we get to spring and we get to summer and all is good with the world. And then come summer, in the middle of summer, we get the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. And then from that point on, it's getting darker and darker until we get to winter. So here in Rwanda, the seasons are very much governed between dry and wet. And in the UK, where I grew up, it's very much governed by hot and cold. So it's kind of a big tradition that winter solstice, a lot of people head towards very ancient sacred sites, so very ancient pre-Christian sites like Stonehenge. And there's a big celebration. And in wintertime, it's mostly about remembering the dead and commemorating those who have passed in the year before. And then looking ahead to the future and looking ahead to the brighter days coming and everything that you hope to do in the year as the sun starts to take over. So that's why I'm all glittery today, because a little celebration. And I thought I would just share with you a poem. It's called The Crone of Winter. And I wrote this when I was at some point in my 20s. So it's a very, very long time ago. It might not be a great poem, but it's an origin story about how winter came to be, how the cold came into the world. I'll give you a hint. It's to do with a very bitter woman. So you can tell me at the end of the poem whether or not you think she was justified. Was she right to become what she became? Let me know in the comments below and have a lovely sparkly start to the festive season. The Crone of Winter. The Crone of Winter stands with her back against the frost. Her hair is carved from ivory, her moustache made of moss. Her brow furrows hard as ice above her hollow eyes, and when the wind begins to howl, she joins in with its cries. Her gemstone orbs, as blue as ice, shine with mottled glee, and stream with crystal teardrops, as salty as the sea. She watches night's first snowflakes lightly scorch the ground, and laughs as drifts begin to form on every ditch around. She trails a cloak of spiders' webs about her rime-starched dress, which flows like mountain mist and cowls her drooping breast. Her fingers, sharp and twisted like the branches of a tree, scratch with chalkboard jarring on the edges of the breeze. Her gilded slippers crush the life from insects underfoot. Animals weak, from deer to sheep, fall with just one look. Words laden with the stench of death, whispered soft and clear, lost upon a border wind that mortals never hear. When she sings, icicles chime like churchyard bells, her smile likened only to the frosty gates of hell. Between her glass translucent nails she spins a hoary dust, glittering like moth's wings, scented with stag musk. Wheresoever it doth fall, on birds or trees or children's eyes. They are protected from the cold. Through winter they survive. She holds within her full moon palm the gift of life and death. With one hand she doth gift the gift. She takes it with one breath. Queen of the Boreal, she has 1,000 names. To her, our whole existence is but one scornful game. She lives as long as winter, and longer than the years. She knows our hopes, our dreams, our thoughts, our deepest inner fears. But all of this, in knowing, no compassion does she spare. She never dwells upon it, and neither does she care. She sees so little born in the season she purveys. All she looks on perishes beneath her granite gaze. Nothing ever grows around her or within. A mother or a lover she has never been. How can compassion grow in one compassionless? We do not care for her. Why should she care for us? All around soft powder lies, as fine as diamond dust. The sharp north winds go riding by, howling out their lust. And the crone of winter stands, with her back against the frost, thinking on her loneliness, counting out the cost. For once she loved the summer king, when the world was new. She kept this feeling locked inside, hidden from his view. Back then there was no winter, no coldness in the world. She had been a countess, skin as bright as pearl. She'd dressed each day in mourning, she'd slept in twilight shade. She'd walked each dewy evening along a scented promenade, filled with honeysuckle, sweet jasmine, and night stock, up beyond the moon and the meteor's burning rock. She'd sit herself beside a fount, flowing with white blood, the god's own very nectar that gave life to the mud. She'd listen to the nightingale sing its soulful song. She'd wait there every evening. She didn't care how long, just to catch a glimpse of him, the burning summer king. His presence hot and powerful, lion's claw and nettle's sting. To look upon him hurt her eyes, it hurt her heart much more. Yet still she couldn't tear her eyes from what she thought she saw. A little twinkle in his look, a second's favoured glance, conveying through the Milky Way a thought that made her blanch. An image in her mind of them lying side by side, a look that told her quietly he knew her deep inside. Those were eternally happy days. Love's hope grew undisturbed. A rose amongst its cousins, life's spices and childhood's herbs. No worms came to burrow the roots, nor black fly plague the leaves. Every day a new bud bloomed, expectation towered tall as trees. But into every garden, eventually, falls some rain. And into hers a monsoon blew, of sorrow, hate and pain. One day she'd waited half the year, and still he hadn't come. Anguish twisted at her lips. Where was her handsome son? Eventually she saw him, stood there fine as day. A look of love shone in his eyes, but, to her dismay, she saw an awful truth in her all-consuming king. For he was gazing past her into spring. Her stomach gave a lurch, breath fled from both her lungs, bile rose in her throat and burned across her tongue. She closed her eyes and locked herself away in darkest night. She cried away her beauty, her youth and looks took flight. Her blood froze in her veins, all warmth like steam did rise. And when, at last, she opened them, snow fell from the skies. All the goodness of her soul had floated up above and fell back down to earth as icy, unrequited love. Her sorrow was so great, her hatred was so strong, that all the earth was void of joy. Everything was gone. Buried beneath a blanket of her suffocating grief, sparing not a single plant, not a berry, bird, or leaf. As summer fell for spring, and bore their autumn child, winter vanquished all the earth, fearsome, rough, and wild. Savage in her loathing, time never helped to heal, forgetting what it's like to love, to hope, to think, to feel. Instead, she turned the darker arts of murder and mistrust. All that glittered gold before had quickly turned to rust. But summer's blaze burns just as strong as winter's fearsome rage. And as the dawn of time grows old, and aeons pass and age, as universes spin and turn, as the cosmos reels and gleams, as tides dance, stars implode, rain transforms to steam, as morning dawns, new marches on, as sunlight starts to dim, half the year belongs to her, and half belongs to him. And so the crone of winter turned her back against the world, engulfed in snow-white flakes that all around her swirled, and leaving not one footprint in the ashes of her life, she sighed a breath of Nordic wind as sharp as any knife. Then, sprinkling that mystic dust softly o'er her eyes, she prayed an end to solitude, to see a new sunrise.